Gentlemen, today we are in fact taking a journey that takes place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. While there are a myriad of weapon systems that you could choose from, none has been more prolific, or maybe more infamous, than the LS-1977, colloquially known as the lightsaber. Gentlemen, before we go into anything today, we have to thank the sponsor of today's video, the Galactic Empire. If you're looking to get your Imperial colonization on, they are the guys to see. Go ahead and hit www.galacticempire.com to get all the information that you could possibly want in your galactic colonization conquests. Also, today we have to thank the other sponsor of the channel, the Tatooine Desert Institute. If you're looking to get your start in gunsmithing, they are the guys to see. They teach you everything from blaster mechanics to forging to energy weapon systems. They are the #1 leader in galactic Imperial weapon systems. And if you're looking to get your start in weapon systems today, they are the guys to see. Thank you very much to both of our sponsors. Back to the video. The LS-1977, as a lot of you know, is one of the most infamous weapons that has ever been derived and used in the galaxy, both in terms of a religious standpoint as well as in a militaristic standpoint. Originally, these things were designed by the Knights of the Jedi Order over several thousand years ago. So while this is from what we would assume to be older technology, it is still cutting edge, pun intended, in terms of close quarters weapon system. Now, some of the things that you guys need to know about the LS-1977 is that it is very difficult to get your hands on these. They are, for lack of a better term, let's go ahead and take this back a little bit. So, the LS-1977 is the standard issue weapon of the Knights of the Jedi Order, or as a lot of you know them now as the Kojo, just because it's a little bit difficult to say Knights of the Jedi Order all the time. This is essentially an energy beam, and as you can see, it is retractable, which means that there's a lot of capabilities that you can have when fighting an enemy. A couple thousand years ago, the Knights of the Jedi Order were using what we today now know as kyber crystals, and they were using these crystals to sort of power and imbue standard swords, as you would, stuff made out of Beskar, other Durasteel, and other things like that. And as the Knights of the Jedi Order progressed, and as their weapons development R&R systems sort of started to look at these things, they sort of came up with these ways to house the crystals inside of the hilts. And after a couple prototypes here and there, we ended up getting the weapon system that we know today. That's sort of when we really start seeing the earliest versions of the LS-1977. Now, this isn't sort of like your standard 416 or your Glocks, your DR-44s, or even your D11s. These are each individually made by the wielder themselves. So when you have something that's a little bit more prolific, like a Glock or like a standard AR platform system, these are going to be mass produced. Either there's going to be military contracts, or there's going to be sort of an incentive to figure out a way to streamline production to get as many of these things made as possible. Not the case when you look at the LS-1977. So what we have here is actually big thanks to the Galactic Empire for allowing me to take this out of their armory and be able to do a video on this. So as we were stating before, the vast majority of these things were individually made by the wielder themselves. Now, this one we did retrieve from the temple on Coruscant during Operation Nightfall. And from what we know of the Kojo Order, since it no longer being around, has that whenever a Jedi or whenever a service member of the Kojo Order passed on, died in the line of duty, they would take their weapon system, if it was retrievable, and they would put it in the armory vault, and as such use them as either replacements, as either backups, or temporary sabers to give to either trainees, younglings, initiates into the order, etc. So as a result of this very slow manufacturing process, there are not a lot of these around, which if you do find these things, and I'm not condoning this, but if you see them in black markets like in Coruscant or in Nar Shaddaa or in other outer world systems, the premium on these things is going to be astronomical, more than what most galactic citizens make in a solar cycle. So that being said, This is not really an obtainable weapon system, but here in the Scout Trooper Actual Command Post, we do want you guys to have as much information as possible. So, aside from the basic history of these things, they were used by the Kojo Order. They were these standard issue weapons. The Kojo Order didn't necessarily believe in projectile weaponry, and so as a result, they stuck to the sort of light swords that we see as these things are. So, that sort of is, I'm not going to say that it was partially due to their downfall, but having a weapon system that is so reliant on close quarters combat going up against projectile weaponry, especially a lot of what the technology is nowadays, I can definitely see why in the weapons department the Kojo Order was overwhelmed in the end. Now, I'm not going to speak on the religious nature of the Kojo Order. We do have innumerable records of the religion of the Kojo Order imbuing the service members of the Kojo Order with specific supernatural abilities. I have not personally seen this. My service time is after Operation Nightfall, so I actually was not able to partake in seeing any of these in action. So please take all the information that I am giving you with a massive grain of Tatooine salt. Now, as a lot of you Grand Moffs are itching for, I know my Imperial Navy guys out there want me to go for this, but we are going to go tip to butt on this weapon system, and I am going to give you a brief overview of just sort of the basic structure of these things, as well as touch on a couple variants that we have seen throughout history. So, what we have here is a standard, basic run-of-the-mill, single-bladed LS-1977. So, this is going to have an emitter, a body, a pommel, and a housing chamber for the internals. These things, being able to take apart them without specific machinery is next to impossible. This is press fit together, and from the records that we have, the Kojo Order, like I touched on earlier, their supernatural abilities from their religious experiences, were able to use those supernatural abilities to disassemble these things, reconstruct them. That's also partially how they were built. So that's also another reason as to why we have seen really no aftermarket support for these things, as the production methods of creating these are so specific and almost supernatural in nature that we just don't, the technology hasn't caught up to the supernatural in that sense. There is magic in the galaxy. We can look to the Night Sisters over in Dathomir, but for now we're gonna stick to the Kojo Order. Coming here from the top, we do have some basic wrappings around here. This was essentially probably to just help out with grip texture from whoever was using this back in the day. Up here at the top, we do have our emitter section. Now, you are, like I said, there are other models. So this is just a standard LS-1977, and all of them are essentially standard 1977s. They're sort of, that's sort of the overarching term we use. But we do have specific models that we have identified, as in the AS-2002, the OBK-1977, as well as the ROTJ-LS-1980. So for those of you that want to look those up, I'm going to leave them in the description and you can go study those examples, but essentially they all do the same thing. Moving down from the emitter, we do have the grip section. This is leading into the activation switch, which is a little bit before, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This is to house the focusing chambers that enable the crystal that is inside here to focus into the beam. I will demonstrate that now. So as you can see, from inside here, the focusing crystal is projecting the beam outward. We have our focusing channels in here, and it is focusing it out into the blade that you see right in front of you. It's not hot to the touch, or even to be around it as you would expect, but as we've seen in the historical record, these things are incredibly dangerous weapons, so please be careful if you ever do get your hands on one of these, or you ever come across one of these things. Inside here is actually where the crystal is housed. So you're going to have your crystal here, focusing chambers here, power supply down here, and then extra internals that fill out the rest of the internals, as well as stabilizing agents that if this thing were to take a beating or fall from really great heights, then the crystals and the other internals wouldn't be damaged. Moving down from the crystal chamber, we are going to have the main body of the saber. This is essentially this section right here. This is where your second hand goes. These are two-handed weapons, although they can be used in single hand configuration. The blade is actually weightless, which actually leads to another point that I wanted to say. These are not like your standard melee swords. These require an absolutely insane amount of training, which, going back to the supernatural religious stances of the Kojo Order, is probably what enabled them to wield them in such an effective way. Hyper training, hyper specialization. This is sort of a weapon that is tailor-made to those specific operators, and not something that you would see a scout or even a Republic commando from back in the day carrying. Inside the main body, we have a lot of stabilization units as well as a power supply. This is sort of just to protect the internals of the saber itself. So back down here, we do have a standard cover tech wheel. This was used to mount the weapon to the war belts of the Kojo Order. They had specific attachment points. I don't have any on my kit right now. I'll go into my kit a little later. But I do not have any on my kit right now, so I have just been using the standard mag pouches just to sort of carry it around. It's easy activation, but for what it is, it's good enough. It's good enough. Coming back down here, we do have the end of the hilt. We do have the pommel. You've seen a lot of different models of this in the past. There's been a ton of very famous models, the OBK 2002 and the OBK 2005. These are all made specifically to whoever was wielding them at the time. You're not going to get too much variety with some of the older models, which is I'm estimating what this was. This is a very basic model that we have right here, but it is still very, very interesting to get an insight into this weapon system. Guys, the LS-1977 is one of the most infamous and famous weapon systems that we have ever had on the channel, and it is an absolute treat that we have here today, that we are able to actually go over this weapon system. This is something that I never thought we would have on the channel, but big thank you to the Galactic Armory for taking this out and bringing it down here and letting us show it off to you guys. We cannot thank them enough, as well as the Tatooine Desert Institute. Again, if you're getting to do a weapon systems training and weapon systems development, they are the guys to go to. This has been an absolute dream of mine to have one of these on the channel, and I cannot thank them enough for setting it up. But guys, as always, none of this is going to matter unless you get out there and you train. Guys, thank you so much for coming by. I have nothing else for you. Have a great day, and may the 4th be with you.